Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking what I honestly think is one of the most fascinating business stories in modern history. I mean, have you ever actually stopped and wondered how a 19th century patent medicine, literally concocted by a pharmacist who was just looking for a painkiller, somehow transformed into one of the most recognized, valuable, and, let's face it, ubiquitous brands on planet Earth? It's just a wild story of sheer invention, insanely aggressive marketing, and total cultural dominance. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive right into this because the sheer absurdity of how we got from point A to point B is staggering. Seriously, look at this contrast. On one hand, you have 1886. Picture this. A guy is just stirring some mysterious liquid in a three-legged brass kettle in a random backyard in Atlanta, Georgia. And on the other hand, today, a massive multinational corporate powerhouse that operates in over 200 countries serving billions of drinks a single day. The journey of bridging that gap, bridging that kettle to the globe, is exactly what we're going to map out for you today.
So let's start right at the very beginning with Section 1, the Brain Tonic Era, looking at its origins in 1886.
Okay, so set the scene with me. It's post-Civil War Atlanta. The date is May 8th, 1886, and a pharmacist and wounded Confederate veteran named Dr. John Pemberton is experimenting. And, it's incredibly ironic that one of the world's most famous, beloved sodas was originally invented by a morphine-addicted pharmacist who was desperately trying to formulate a medicinal pain tonic. Because of local prohibition laws at the time, he needed a non-alcoholic remedy. So what did he come up with in that brass kettle? Well, it was a thick syrup that combined cocoa leaves, which, yes, are the source of cocaine, and cola nuts, which provided a massive hit of caffeine. He took this syrup down to Jacob's Pharmacy, mixed it with some carbonated water, and sold it for just 5 cents a glass. But here's the kicker. It wasn't marketed as a refreshing soda at all. Nope. It was sold as a brain tonic and a temperance drink that was supposed to cure headaches and fatigue.
Now, the absolutely crucial thing to understand here is that this was definitely not an overnight success. Just look at this number, $50. That was their total revenue for the entire first year. They were selling, on average, just 9 drinks a day. 9! And when you factor in the roughly $70 they spent in expenses, Pemberton's revolutionary invention actually operated at a $20 loss during its first 12 months. Not exactly a blockbuster start, right?
But while the sales were undeniably sluggish, the branding was just absolute genius right out of the gate. Pemberton's bookkeeper, a guy named Frank M. Robinson, suggested the name Coca-Cola because he figured the two C's would look really great in advertising. Plus, it directly referenced those two main ingredients, the coca leaf and the cola nut. But even more remarkably, Robinson designed the logo himself. He used Spencerian script, which, fun fact, was just the standard handwriting style for formal business correspondence back then. Think about that for a second. The exact same hand-drawn logo sitting on a can or bottle in your fridge right now was sketched out by a bookkeeper over 130 years ago. Mind-blowing, right?
Sadly, Pemberton wouldn't even live to see his invention take off. He passed away in 1888, which brings us to Section 2, building the bottling empire and the massive bottling breakthrough.
Enter Asa Candler. He was a really sharp Atlanta pharmacist and businessman. Over the course of a couple of years, Candler strategically bought up different portions of the business, and for about $2,300, he acquired full, total control of the Coca-Cola formula and brand. I mean, just think about the sheer magnitude of that return on investment. It's wild. By 1892, Candler incorporated the Coca-Cola company, essentially taking it from a localized, quirky pharmacy tonic and turning it into a highly structured corporation.
Now, Candler was a total master of aggressive marketing. He actually pioneered the idea of giving away coupons for free samples, and he created all sorts of branded merchandise just to get the name literally everywhere. So following that 1886 invention, Candler officially trademarked the name in 1893 to protect it from copycats. But as the drink started expanding nationwide, it hit a wall of intense scrutiny. The U.S. government started trying to regulate those trace amounts of cocaine and caffeine that were still in the drink. So responding to this mounting pressure, between 1903 and 1929, the company gradually altered the recipe, completely removing the cocaine.
Now, what's really interesting about this next point is the number $1 single dollar. In 1899, Asa Candler made what historians often call a fortuitous mistake. 2 lawyers, Benjamin F. Thomas and Joseph B. Whitehead, approached Candler and basically asked for the rights to bottle Coca-Cola. Up until this point, remember, it was mostly just a fountain drink. Candler, who really didn't believe bottling was the future of the industry, sold them the bottling rights for almost the entire United States for a single dollar. But that $1 mistake, it accidentally birthed an absolute juggernaut of a business structure, the franchised bottling model. Instead of the Coca-Cola company having to shell out billions building factories and hiring delivery fleets in every single state, they just manufactured the secret flavor concentrate. Then, they sold that concentrate to independent regional bottlers. Those independent bottlers took on all the massive capital costs of manufacturing, bottling, and distributing the actual liquid. This brilliant setup allowed Coca-Cola to scale incredibly fast. And honestly, this is exactly why you likely have an independent bottling facility operating right now in your own hometown or state. It's the exact same scalable system they use to absolutely dominate the market today.
And that incredible, rapid scale leads us directly into Section 3, becoming a global icon. This is where we see major expansion and cultural impact as we enter the 20th century, and the brand completely sheds its old medicinal pharmacy origins.
So, in 1919, the Candler family decided to sell the Coca-Cola empire to a group of investors led by a man named Ernest Woodruff. And the price tag? $25 million. Just let that sink in. From a $2,300 purchase to a $25 million sale in just a matter of decades. Wow. Ernest's son, Robert Woodruff, would eventually step up and take over as president from 1923 all the way to 1954. And he truly became the dominant architect of the brand's entire global identity.
Robert Woodruff's impact was just staggering. Let's look at the timeline. In 1915 and 1916, they introduced the famous Contour bottle. And get this, it was specifically designed so you could recognize it in the dark or by touch alone. Then in the 1920s, Woodruff aggressively pushed the brand into Europe, starting with France. By the 1930s, they brilliantly tied the drink to the feeling of happiness with iconic campaigns like The Pause That Refreshes. They also practically standardized the jolly red and white image of Santa Claus we all know today. Yeah, no joke, the modern Santa is essentially a Coke ad. But perhaps most significantly, during the 1940s, Woodruff pledged that every single U.S. soldier in World War II would be able to buy a Coke for a nickel no matter where they were deployed. This massive logistical effort didn't just boost troop morale, it effectively introduced Coca-Cola to the entire globe, forever cementing it as this ultimate symbol of American culture. But as we know, no corporate ascent is perfectly smooth. Let's move to Section 4, Diversification and the Stumble, looking at some major mid-century changes. Let's move to the timeline and see how this built. Coca-Cola pretty quickly realized they couldn't just rely on selling one single drink forever. In the 1940s, Fanta was actually developed in Germany, and Coke later acquired it globally. By 1960, they acquired Minute Maid, officially stepping into the juice market. Then in 1961, they launched Sprite to aggressively compete in the lemon-lime space. And jumping to the 1970s, due to some wildly fluctuating global sugar prices, they had to fundamentally alter the US recipe by switching to high-fructose corn syrup. So you see, they were constantly diversifying and adapting. But then came 1985. Facing really fierce competition from a sweeter-tasting Pepsi, Coca-Cola executives made the shocking and frankly baffling decision to completely replace their century-old original formula with something called New Coke. And oh boy, the public backlash was immediate, it was intense, and it was historically massive. You see, consumers weren't just buying a flavored syrup, they were buying a piece of nostalgia, a real legacy. It was a humiliating blunder that caused sheer, unadulterated panic in the boardroom, forcing the company to pivot and bring back the original formula as Coca-Cola Classic just months later. But paradoxically, the whole disaster ended up proving exactly how deeply and emotionally attached the global public was to the original brand. It kind of worked out in the end.
Which perfectly sets the stage for Section 5, the modern multinational powerhouse. Spanning the late 20th and 21st centuries, we see the company emerge from the New Coke debacle, double down, and scale to unprecedented global heights.
Looking at this breakdown through the decades, their expansion was just relentless. In the 1980s, they launched Diet Coke, which obviously became a colossal hit, and they even briefly owned Columbia Pictures. The 1990s saw them absolutely dominating the bottled water space with Dasani. Then the 2000s were all about acquiring health-conscious and alternative brands, things like Odwalla, Honest Tea, and Zico coconut water. And by the 2010s, they were buying up Costa Coffee and taking major financial stakes in huge energy drinks like Monster. To put this in perspective, today, this company manages over 500 distinct brands. 500! They are constantly acquiring new assets so that no matter how consumer tastes might shift, they are pretty much guaranteed to have a drink in your hand.
However, as we all know, a 21st century audience expects far more accountability from its legacy brands. With massive scale comes massive scrutiny, and Coca-Cola faces some really intense global pressures today. They are frequently cited as one of the world's top contributors to branded plastic pollution. There are also deep, ongoing environmental concerns regarding the sheer massive amounts of water they extract to run their bottling plants. Furthermore, as a leading purveyor of sugary beverages, they face continuous public health scrutiny that links their core products directly to rising obesity rates. Now, to adapt, they are constantly rolling out new innovations, things like portion-controlled mini cans, zero-sugar alternatives, and they are pushing aggressively for 100% recycled packaging.
Which ultimately leaves us with this final overarching question to ponder together. We've seen this heavily guarded secret formula evolve from a quirky medicinal tonic sold at a single pharmacy for 5 cents into this absolute global icon that literally shapes our holidays and everyday consumer habits. But as global environmental challenges mount and health-conscious consumer habits rapidly change, how does a 19th century brand continue to reinvent itself to survive the intense pressures of the 21st century? It's a massive challenge for the company, and honestly, how they answer it will define the next chapter of business history. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you a clear, structured, and fun look into the truly incredible legacy of Coca-Cola. See you next time.